welcome back to Bloodwood Garage. Sorry about the background noise. It's a little cold out here. We've got a couple inches of snow and ice out there on the ground. So it's about 35 degrees in the garage. There's no insulation out here just yet, so we've got a couple of heaters running. And today I'm going to start the teardown process on this Lincoln. This is actually an 04. I was wrong about the year. It's an 04 Lincoln Town Car. There's a previous video about the history of this vehicle and why it's here. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. Today I'm going to start the teardown process. I'm trying to get this fender, the front bumper, and the headlights off so that I can get the doors open without causing any more damage to the front edges of the door. You can see that fender there is tucked behind that door. Every time I open it, it's going to bend the outer edge of that door just a little bit more. And same thing on the passenger side. And I was correct about the passenger side. She couldn't get out on the driver's side. There was a bystander there to help her. And when he opened the door up, that's what happened, is it bent the fender in because the whole front end was shifted over. So no big deal. She got out of the car. She's still doing well. She's still recovering. And we're going to fix this thing up and go through the total rebuild process. So put a little dent there. You can see just how much that fender's rolled inward and the edge of the door is rolled out. So we'll fix that. But the first thing I need to do is tear down the front of this vehicle so that I can get those fenders apart. And also want to see the core support and exactly how much damage is done on the core support. I know I'm going to need a new one. My question is, I don't know if I'm going to need to remove the radiator and the AC condenser in order to get that core support out. So main focus today, I want to get the bumper off, I want to get the headlights out, some of the front structure, and maybe that driver's side fender. We'll see how far we get. I'm going to call this my first win of this project. I wasn't sure if this right headlight was going to be broken or not. All the tabs are in really good shape. Here's the top two tabs, one down by the grill. Couldn't see the backside of the headlight, but it's in really good shape, so I won't need to get a headlight for this thing. It's not cracked or broken anywhere, which is a really good thing. These headlights, while they're not very expensive, when you have a project like this, all that little stuff starts to add up. The driver's side headlight, absolutely destroyed. All the tabs are broken. Of course, the reflector, the base, I mean, all of that stuff. So I'll hold on to this because you can see it's got a plug here. There's not plugs on the back. There's actually a harness that runs through here and goes to all the different bulbs that are inside the housing. Sometimes those harnesses can be different if you get an aftermarket headlight. I'm going to try to find one of the OEM Lincoln headlights at like a U-pull, or if I can come up with a parts car that's got an OEM headlight on it, then I won't even need to worry about it. I'll just pull the bulbs out and toss this thing. From there you can see the header panel is actually destroyed up here in the front. It's rotated down on this side here. There's a good crack here at the top by the grill. It's cracked here by that headlight mounting bolt. That's going to be the next thing I'm going to get off. This is actually like a center deflector piece, so I'll try to figure out how this mounts in there. Looks like there's just a couple of push pins that hold it in place. Get that out of the way, and then I'm going to try to get this whole header panel off right across the middle here. That will let me see a lot more of the core support, and then it's also going to let me see the top of the frame and the impact bar for the bumper. The header panel is out, and I learned something about the car that I didn't know. I thought that I saw a sticker back here on the back bumper that didn't look like a Ford sticker. You can see that barcode there. That's not a Ford part number. And I thought, man, that kind of looks like an aftermarket front bumper cover, but I didn't know that the car was ever in a wreck that required anything more than maybe just a paint on the bumper or something. But then I got to the header panel, and that's a CAPA certified part, meaning that this is an aftermarket header panel. And it fit really good. I don't ever remember seeing the front of this car in an accident. The few times that I saw the car in its later years, it looked just fine. I didn't notice anything that seemed out of the ordinary. So apparently at some point, it was involved in an accident that required at least the header panel and the bumper to be changed. We'll dig a little further and see what else we can find, but you can really see that core support is twisted in here at the end. that piece right there, that round piece below the or above the wiring harness right there, that's actually where it mounts to the frame. This impact bar, there's no way I'm going to get that loose. I'll have to unbolt that. But what I can see, it's hard to tell in this photo, you don't really have any reference points, but the front of the frame is actually swayed over to the right of the car. This is one rail here, this is another rail. Until I get this bumper cover off and get that impact bar off, I won't really know what's going to happen. There's a good chance when I unbolt this, because of how it's twisted and bent over to the side, that it may just spring back. Now, it's not going to spring 100%, but there's a good chance that it could spring over and go where it needs to go. But I can tell there's some frame damage here. We're going to have to get this up on a frame rack and possibly just do a little pull. Now, the cool thing about this, I say cool, but what makes these cars easier to work on than some of your more modern uniframe, unibody frame vehicles, the rails on this thing, anytime you have a point where two rails are bolted together like this is considered a cross member, a radiator cross member core support. There's another one that supports the engine and the trans. As long as I can look at the bolts where the engine and the trans cross member bolts to the frame and it doesn't look like they've been moved, there's a good chance that I'll just need to pull the end of this frame and not the entire frame. So what I'm really hoping is that there's no kinks and there's no bends in the frame, other than it's just kind of shifted over and it hasn't actually crumpled on itself. If we can get away with that, it will be awesome. This will be a really simple process. Get it up on the frame rack, heat it up, make a couple of pulls, make a couple of measurements, we'll be good to go, start bolting parts back on. If there is a kink in that frame somewhere, well, that's going to take a lot more work. We may need to section in a frame. That might be something that'll just kind of sideline this project for a very long time. That is going to require me to lift the body off the frame, pull the engine, the trans. That's a much more intensive process than just bolting on some parts and doing a light pull on the frame. We'll get a little deeper, see where it takes us. Front bumper cover is off. These things are kind of a nightmare sometimes to get off. There's a lot of little screws and stuff at the bottom that hold it onto the car around these like shields and ducts and stuff. The right side over here, there's three, spin the camera, there's three studs that stick through the fender, 11mm nuts on the back side. Kind of universal, a lot of cars use that style to bolt bumpers on, especially the Fords. And then there was like one screw at the bottom, but anyway, it looks like this impact bar is 2 or 3 pieces, because now you can see those nuts right there. Well, that's the end of the frame rail. This impact bar has nuts on the front as well, so it looks like it's a 3-piece impact bar. We may get lucky. Until I get this off and really know a little bit more, we might just not have any frame damage. It could just be an impact bar that I was seeing that it was kind of swayed over, you know. But I'll know a lot more here in a few minutes once I get that loose. I'm going to try to start working on this fender. So this part right here, this is really, really mangled. I'm going to have to be careful that I don't cut myself, especially how far it's pushed in. I mainly want to get it off the tire so I can move the car. And then again, I want to get it off of that fender so that I can open the door without doing any more damage to the door. We'll work on that next. I went ahead and pulled the left front wheel so I can get in there and get the inner fender well out, because it's going to be in the way. Plus I wanted to try to keep the tire from rubbing on this fender. It's going to give me a little bit more room to work. I've got the front bumper off. Now this fender, on these Panther platforms, the plastic liner that you can see inside of here also makes up the inside liner that you can see in here. Kind of like an old Ford truck. A lot of trucks and cars were made like this back in the day. Newer cars, all of that inner structure is metal. It's usually attached to the body and to the frame. But in the case of these, the Crown Vics, the Marauders, and the Grand Marquis, the inner fender is actually its own piece attached to the fender itself. And then it all just hangs off the core support and the frame. So I've got to get everything out of the way. I'm kind of out of breath. I've been crawling all over this thing. I had to get the air compressor for the rear suspension up and out of the way. It's attached. I need to get that ground off. The cable you can see there is the hood pull cable. There's another ground back here in this corner, and then the cruise control module. I've got to get that loose from that inner fender. There's another bolt there that I can see from the bottom side. I'm not really sure what it goes to. Once I get that inner fender out of the way, I'll be able to see a lot more of how this fender actually mounts to the body. Now I did get the couple of bolts that were up here in the front. That area right there, there was two holding it on to the core support, two at the top of the core support, and then hopefully there'll just be a few bolts in the back that I can get to once that fender well is out of the way. And the left fender is now off. We've got the hood out of the way also. I had to do that in order to get this hood hinge that was bolted to the side of the fender. It was kind of captured between this bracket, so I had to get the hood hinge off in order to get the fender off. That was a lot of fun. The hood weighs 25-30 pounds, and I had to kind of move it by myself and get it out of the way while trying to balance everything. But we got that done. The frame definitely took a hit. I mean, you can see there's a dent right in this area here that should not be there. And then also I've mentioned that cross member that the engine sits on. Well, that's this aluminum piece right here. You can see it's shiny right there behind that nut, and basically what that means is that cross member has been shoved over to the right side of the vehicle. And that concerns me. I need to go through the suspension once this is all back together and double check that there's nothing bent or broken in the suspension. Otherwise we could be looking a lot more cost for suspension items. But it also means that the frame is most definitely going to have to be pulled. We'll have to get it up on the rack, and we'll loosen all of the front cross members and get them nice and loose so that the frame can move as we mount it to the rack and as we pull it back into place. I didn't see a kink in there. There's really no crushing other than this side that took a impact, which is a good thing. That tells me that the frame is repairable. It's not going to need to be replaced or sectioned or anything like that, so we're good there. For now, I'll call that done for part one of the Lincoln Project teardown. Make sure to like the video if you like what you saw here. Drop me a comment down below. I do read the comments. If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. See you later.